This is episode number 21. Are you really making progress? Welcome to the Doc Fitness podcast, where it's all about developing your mindset, training and nutritional knowledge so you can lose body fat and build muscle effectively while still living a real life. I am your host, David O'Connor. Now let's get into the show. How are we keeping, guys? And a big welcome back to the Doc Fitness podcast. And I want this episode to be a follow-up to episode number 20, where we went through kind of like the principles behind losing body fat 101. And probably, as I said in the last episode, an episode I probably should have went through a long time ago, because it really sets out the kind of fundamentals in there and kind of very easy first steps on how to get started with things. So with this episode then, I wanted to follow it up with kind of, are you really making progress behind things? Because if you're making small little changes to put you in an overall calorie deficit, and if you don't track that, we'll say closely from the word go, because number one, again, you don't need to track calories from the word go. If you just make a few small tweaks to your daily routines, some things that you can realistically see yourself doing for the long term and manage them and whatnot, how do you know if you're actually making progress in the first place? And this is where I wanted to kind of drive home this episode, to kind of show how we measure progress, how you can measure progress, and be educated along the way. So if you know like you're not making progress, then you can take the next step to make sure that you start making progress. So let's dive in. So you want to lose some body fat, i.e. get leaner. Some people understand that as toning up. Again, all means the same thing. We'll just say get leaner for this purpose of this podcast. So again, if you're not measuring something, how do you know you're actually making progress there in the first place? It's kind of the same with the gym. If you come in, and this is why again we drive home how the fact that Doc Fitness is not just a fucking class that you rock up, or it's a boot camp class or a cardio class or a HIIT class, a metabolic class. We're not about that. We're about proper training going long term. And yeah, sure, we might use different forms of training, kind of metabolic, this and that and the other, but it's part of a bigger picture training plan, so people come in and they constantly progress over time. So it'd be like you coming to the gym and fucking running on a treadmill 3 times a week, but you never really progress that. Yeah, you might run a 5k in X amount of minutes, but you never really push to progress that. Or if you're lifting weights, it's like you're never adding weight to the bar, never doing more sets, never doing more reps, not really challenging yourself as such. So if you're not doing that, how the hell do you know if you're progressing? Because you're probably not. Whereas if you had, for example, in the gym, you could be progressing week on week, for example, and you could be adding weight to the bar, but if you're not actually tracking it in a training log, or at least on a macro level, like know where you are every second or third or fourth week, because again, remember, not everyone wants to be super strict with the training like I might want to be like. But again, if you're not tracking it in some level, how the hell do you know if you're progressing? And it's the same with fat loss. Like, how do you know that you're actually down in body fat week on week? And this is where people then as well, they say, oh, ditch the scales, don't bother looking at the scales. The scales doesn't tell the true picture as such, because it fluctuates and blah, 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 blah. Throw it out, it's not good for your health, all this kind of stuff. And while there is some truth to that, you need to realize as well that losing body fat is going to make you lose weight. So your weight will come down over time. So weight is an objective measure of things. And don't get me wrong, I used to be the school of thought in the past where I'd be like, don't mind the fucking scales, it's just a waste of time, it's going to play with your head. One day it'll be up, one day it'll be down. If you're in a calorie deficit, if you're doing things right, you'll be down overall anyway. But again, the other side of that, 3 weeks has passed and you're still the same weight. Okay, something is fucking wrong here, because you're obviously not down over a 3-week period. Weight fluctuations probably would have stabled out by that time, okay? Because I'll talk about weight fluctuations in a minute, but again, there's kind of 4 main factors that we use for measuring progress, and we kind of interchange between all of them. Some people we might focus on more on other ones, but this is kind of the 4 that we use. Number 1 is weight, right? Now, if you want to get the most accurate way to measure your weight, it is to take it daily, the first thing in the morning after you wake up, after you go to the bathroom, and before you take any food or fluids on board. That is the most accurate way to do it, right? Now, why do you take it daily? You can take it daily and then you take the average of the 7 days. And what's that going to do? It's going to teach you kind of how your body weight might fluctuate throughout the week. If you had a stressful night at work or day at work, if you ate late the night before, if you drank more water one of the days, if you ran one day and didn't drink enough water, your weight is going to fluctuate throughout the week. But what we're looking for is that overall weekly average of that trend coming down. Now, again, how realistic is that for you to do? Are you somebody that likes those kind of numbers and likes kind of that data collection type stuff like myself? If not, I'd recommend at least weigh twice a week, because let's pretend if I weighed in on a Friday and you've had a stressful week at work, you had a fucking row with the partner at home, whatever it is. You could be stressed, which is going to cause you to hold a little bit more water than usual, and that water could jump up your weight a little small bit, and it could not show a true representation of where your body fat kind of coming down is right now. It'll show what your current weight in that point in time is, but it might be masking your overall fat loss. So hopefully that makes sense. Whereas if you weigh twice a week, hopefully it'll show you that you could be fluctuating from 2 to 3 pounds. And like, your weight can fluctuate anywhere from 1 to fucking 4 pounds in any given week, and that depends on a number of different factors. So that's one thing, is the weight. Number 2 is photos, and we kind of do these monthly here in the gym, again just to make sure that we're assessing that side of things, and if weight loss is kind of slowing down, because the leaner people get, the less body fat they have to lose, the slower the results are going to be in the scales. It's nice to keep the photos going, to keep that motivation going, and to show them how much progress they actually have made, because it's very easy to get fucking fixated on half a pound or pound a week, 2 pounds, over time. The third one is measurements, and we kind of use like 7 key measurements, but I'm going to give you 3 in this episode that are kind of the main keys to keep on track of. Now, if you have a tape that you can, the main thing with this is consistency. That let's just say if you got it measured with someone, and they use a different tape, and they measured it kind of a funny way, and you were just kind of standing there still, and then you measure it yourself 3 weeks later, and you use a different tape, and you're kind of measuring it by standing up, not kind of slouched over, or even tiny things, it could throw it off by fucking 1 to 2 centimeters. Just on well, maybe not that much, but like, it'll throw it off a couple anyway, right? Based on kind of inaccuracy errors. That's not to say that you've gained weight or your measurements are up. It's just the fact that you're taking the fucking things wrong. So what we recommend people to do is to take them themselves, get a tape that they're going to use consistently over time. We obviously provide them here in the gym, but if you're at home, just buy one on fucking Amazon or wherever online and pick one up that you can accurately kind of replicate every single time. And use the tape kind of like to the right hand side or left hand side of your body, right? You stand nice and tall, and you tense up your muscles as if you're bracing for a punch. Because if you tense your muscles, it's just an accurate way that you can replicate that every single time. You just basically tense then every time you're doing that, which will hopefully give you more an accurate representation of where you're at. You want to make sure the tape is straight around, basic common sense really, to be honest. And the 3 points I want to mention here are, around the belly button is number 1. Stick your index finger down, 3 fingers together, and measure from the middle of your belly button down what the third finger is. Measure that distance, and then go 3 fingers above your belly button. They're like 3 key kind of hip area measures that you can keep an eye of to make sure that those measurements are coming down. And we kind of recommend to do those every 2 to 3 weeks. But again, over time, then people just kind of start taking them monthly when they're doing photos and stuff. Again, a nice little way to keep on track of all that. The last one then that you can use is, how are your clothes fitting? Is the belt notches for the men coming down over time? Are the pants getting smaller? Is the clothes sizes getting smaller? And again, these are all objective measures. That one is kind of an obvious one. But like, we've come across, we'll say, people in the past that might say, oh, I don't bother doing photos, measurements or weight. I just go by how I'm feeling and the clothes that I'm fitting into. And look, that might be fine when somebody has a lot of weight to lose at the start and they're going rapidly down in clothes sizes, but over time you're only going to be shooting yourself in the foot if you're not. Like, if you are serious about this, track the fucking thing and make sure you're making progress. And if you're not, then you can make the tweak that's needed to make sure that you're making progress, or we can at least find out why we're not making progress in the first place. So that's kind of like the 4 key kind of areas of taking measurements with weight, photos, and measurements themselves, and how the clothes are fitting. The next step then is just, as I kind of mentioned it already, is being aware of weight fluctuations. Like, your weight can fluctuate more so for ladies than men, just due to different hormonal fluctuations, time in the month, that kind of stuff that men don't have to worry about. Men, you do have it easy, to be brutally honest with you, but including myself. But like, weight can fluctuate based on stress, times you eat the food the day before, how much you eat the day before, what's your hydration status, like how much water you drink one day versus how much you don't drink another day, stress at work, as I said, time of the month, how much even training volume you do that week. Your weight can fluctuate based on any number of those things. So that's why, again, we recommend not to only weigh in once a week, okay? And again, once you have that knowledge, you can kind of realize that over time, because believe me, it is fucking disheartening when you're doing all the stuff you need to do. You think you're in a calorie deficit, you're eating better, you're training hard in the gym, you're watching what you eat when you're out on weekends for friends, you're having a few drinks, but you're trying to adhere to make sure you're in a calorie deficit, which is perfectly fine. But it's disheartening if you don't see that number coming down. And that's why, again, take the photos, take the measurements, and take the average of your weight over a 2-week period, right? If that average is not down, something needs to change, because you're obviously not in a calorie deficit in the first place to lose that body fat. And that's where we kept looking at ways of, right, how can we create a bigger deficit to go forward then from there, okay? Step 3 then is kind of like, what rates of progress can you look out for, okay? And usually the figures that I give here, right, these are basically halved for ladies. It's just the way it usually is. But if you look at like what's a sustainable kind of target for kind of everyone across the board, really, is 0.5% to a percentage of your body weight per week. Now the thing is, if somebody has a lot more weight to lose, they can push that a little bit higher. Or if you have a short-term specific goal, you can afford to push it a little bit higher as well. But I'm talking here anywhere from 10 to 16 weeks, right, of a fat loss phase, we'll call it. If you're consistently in a calorie deficit for 10 to 16 weeks without a break, what's sustainable is 0.5% to a percentage of your body fat per week, or body weight per week. On the lower end, if you're already very, very lean, like if you're fucking under 15-16% body fat, I'd be aiming for the lower end of that. Whereas if you're 20% plus body fat, for lads, for example, you would aim for the 1% mark for that. But again, this is based on kind of time frames and goals and short-term goals and long-term goals and what the specific person wants out of things. So like we would call a fat loss phase like anywhere from 10 to 16 weeks before we might take a break. And there might even be breaks in between that as well. But let's just say that that's the consistent 10 to 12 weeks or 10 to 16 weeks. What's called a mini cut then, or a mini fat loss phase if you like, is anything that's under 6 weeks. Then we can afford to push things up to like 1.5 to 2% of body weight loss per week. And all you're really aiming for there is you're putting yourself in a bigger deficit, which is harder because you'll be eating lower calories. The training might be the same, or you might be doing even a little bit more to make sure you're holding onto the muscle tissue that you have in order to hit a specific goal, okay? So they're kind of two kind of things that you can judge off based off rates of progress. If you're not hitting those, then it's time to make a tweak. And this is where having a fucking coach, objective eye look at things is so valuable. And this is why we coach every single member privately here, no matter if there are, let's say, a one-to-one client, a semi-private client, or one of our large group training clients. Every single person here gets coached privately with that. So like, just to recap to date, we've gone through how do you measure things, weight fluctuations, rates of progress. And then the last kind of point I just want to address for this short little episode is, what if none of these are moving? What if like weight isn't coming down? Weight, it's kind of up and down every week, but it's the same. What if the photos aren't kind of really the same? Measurements aren't really the same? That kind of stuff. As I kind of already said really throughout this episode, if after 2 weeks that nothing has changed, or even 3 weeks, it's time to figure out why. The short answer to that is you were just not doing enough. You're not in an overall calorie deficit to lose body fat in the first place. It doesn't matter. You could train your fucking face off. You can train your face off till the cows come home. If you're not in a deficit to lose body fat, you will not lose body fat. Sure, if you're, let's say, quote unquote, eating good and you're allowing yourself to be a bit lax in the weekends and maybe 1 or 2 days throughout the week, but you're training really hard. Oh, I train really hard. I do X, Y, and Z. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But you're not going to lose body fat if you're not in a deficit. You can't argue against science. As I said, you can train till the cows come home, but again, if you're not in a deficit at the end of the day, you are not going to lose body fat in the first place. And the last one then is just to realise that kind of the adaptive mechanisms of how your body works, because your body will adapt to things over time, right? And another aspect of people that they get pissed off with as well is like, let's pretend that if I started on a fat loss phase, right, and I'm losing let's say the first week I lost 4 or 5 pounds, second week I lost 4 pounds, and then from there, then that's kind of like, and all a lot of that would be, it's just water weight to kind of start with, and kind of your body's way of kickstarting things, getting rid of like glycogen stores from the reduction of carbohydrate intake and the reduction of calories, blah blah blah. So if you don't need to know about, just think of it as a big drop in water weight. That's the first kind of week. But sustainably, I'm looking at like a 2 pound a week target, and so that's based off 1% of body fat loss per week. But we're let's just say we're 10 weeks in now, right? And I've lost 20 pounds. Obviously, my body weight now was going to be lower because I've lost those 20 pounds. So the initial target of 1% based on 2 pounds per week, it's not going to be 2 pounds a week anymore. It might be 1.8, 1.9, 1.7, whatever. It's only a small reduction, but it's at least been known to be aware of that. The other factor of that as well is that if I was getting very lean, if I was getting down to really low body fat percentage levels, like anywhere from 10 to 15% body fat, would say, for example, I might have to aim for smaller targets because I might be in too big a deficit, so my training starts taking a hit. I'm fucking tired all the time, I'm moody all the time. Again, remember, you're not fucking doing this to step on stage to be in a bikini competition or lads being in a physique competition. You're doing it so you can feel better and look a bit better and perform a bit better. So again, you don't need to go into that kind of depths with things, because this is where I think people get a bit confused, and they might follow someone on Instagram that is a bikini competitor that have done a show in the past. And I don't coach clients like that. We don't coach clients like that. We coach clients to look and feel better while living a fucking real life, and we want to achieve that whilst doing that. So I'm not going to put people into massive calorie deficits, feeling miserable all the time, when they can get the same results by being in a less of a deficit and enjoying the training and finding ways to enjoy kind of like setting performance goals, setting weight loss targets and fat loss targets, or hitting those things, all that kind of fancy stuff down the line. But again, it's just to know that things will adapt over time, and your body will get better at kind of not burning calories over time as well. So things will automatically slow down somewhat over time, and it's to expect that and not be expecting the same fucking results over and over again the kind of deeper you go into a fat loss phase. And that is why we're so big on people getting like performance based goals as well around their training and nutrition, not just to have like fat loss targets. And then like the kind of last point then to tie all that in is like, have little milestones along the way as well. Like, you know, if you have a 6-week goal and you hit that 6-week goal, don't just kind of stop at the 6 weeks and say, alright, I've hit that now, what's next? Because I think I fell into that trap before. We see some clients fall into that trap right now as we're recording this episode. But again, it's to have like a little, maybe have like a little mini celebration set in place for that. Maybe it's a meet out with the friends, maybe it's somewhere, a night away with the partner, something simple like, but have some sort of thing that you can fucking reward yourself with and look back and just give yourself a pat in the back, like, well done, that I've fucking got this far, and now we're going to keep plowing forward, rather than just saying, oh, what's next. Take a moment to kind of relax and enjoy kind of where you've got today, and then you can kind of objectively see things going forward as well, because at the end of the day, you're doing this to hopefully live a better quality of life, and that's all we want from things like. So, look at, hopefully there's some big takeaways in there for you. If you're not assessing, you really are only guessing at the end of the day, and it's just to highlight the fact that if you put a bit of effort, if you're putting a lot of effort into changing some nutritional habits over time, getting your arse in the gym and training 3 to 4 times a week, maybe even doing some like long walks or even some like short runs or cardio work outside of that, put the effort in to track if you're actually making that progress in the first place. And if you haven't listened to episode 20 as well, go back and listen to that first on kind of where to get started with the deficit and dropping body fat 101, because that's a kind of a great starter episode for that. Obviously, if you're doing all those things already, it might be time to take the next step and kind of work out like specific calorie targets on what you need to drop body fat and protein targets, that kind of fancy stuff. But again, you build up to that over time. You don't just dive into that. And I see a lot of people these days and personal trainers just telling people, oh, just track your calories, you'll be grand. And look at, well, that's fine. I just want to show people that you don't need to do that 24/7. You don't need to do that from the word go. We prefer to teach principles first, build foundations, and then we might get into calorie tracking down the line. But again, we do that while still getting the same results that you might have got from fucking tracking calories from day one and not seeing it as a sustainable thing. We build up to it so it becomes a tool that you can kind of pull from if you need it, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Anyhow, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, you can let me know over my Instagram page. If this kind of resonated with you, if you enjoyed it, don't be afraid to share it with a family member or friend. Just pop it over to them in a message or an email or whatnot, because if you go to docfitnessonline.com/episode 21, that's where the episode will be, all the show notes will be, all the links where you can subscribe and whatnot. And if you haven't left me a review yet, and if you're listening since either the first episode or the 10th episode, I would have greatly appreciate if you could head over to iTunes if you are over there, or Stitcher, to leave me a review if you find value from it. But yes, thank you for tuning in, and we shall chat to you soon. Bye bye.